Everybody. Good afternoon. If everybody could please take their seats. We are calling the meeting to order. And I'd like to welcome everybody to the Transportation Committee meeting of Wednesday, February 26th, 2020. I am Councilman Mike Bonin, the chair, along with my colleague Paul Koretz. We are going to get right into it. There are a few people who have filled out many cards. So I'm going to do multiple public comment and general comment at the beginning. Antonia Ramirez, Patricia McAllister, and Arnold Sachs.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much. Public comments, please. I would like to thank both LA Councilwomen President Nuri Martinez and Ms. Monica Rodriguez for having presented the LAPD Chief Bob Green at the LA City Council yesterday, February 25th, 20.
What item are you speaking on, ma'am?
Public comment.
Well, all right, only give her 45 more seconds. This is your general public comment?
Yes.
It's got to refer to some transportation issues.
Sorry, yeah, thank you. And in transportation, as per the highly esteemed and astute LAPD officer Marco Duarte, he told me your correct job description label is LAPD Deputy Chief and your command is Chief of Staff, and you will be placed at the Metro, which will overlap with LA DOT, whereby you will improve the public health, welfare, and safety of all transportation riders. Please help us arrest all motherfucking criminal gang stalkers, harassers, and thieves and violent offenders like your homeless thieves and your homeless criminal assholes that are overrun here in the city. The Chango Latino wetbacks, the gangbangers, the white trash junkies, the skid row niggers and pimps, and your faggots, trannies, bisexual lesbos that prey on innocent people. Thank you. And item number one.
So, all right, so now that was your general public comment, now set to 2 minutes for all the items on the agenda. Thank
you very much. I thank you. Number one, please, we need to also improve public safety at all LA DOT and Metro bus stops. Crimes are being committed in acts of violence and theft, and we need to have the bus operators report them immediately when the buses approach the riders, and the riders notify them upon arrival. There should be no hesitation, no refusal, no dismissiveness, and they should act accordingly to protect the safety of the future passenger. And item number four, these consultations are costing us taxpayers a bit of money. But however, we, the homeless people, are the ones that are paying for all these costly consultations. Again, this is nothing more than cronyism by the politicians. Again, this is nothing more than what you should be using is common sense, not consultation expenses. It's way out, and we just can't afford these consultant firms. And item number six, many of your cab companies are also tied to the Freemason assholes. If you're being gang stalked like me, they will refuse you pickup or notify everyone while you're in the cab where the fuck you are going. Most of them are Middle Eastern, Africans, and Latinos, and these are nothing more than criminal terrorists who are preying on innocent people and wanting to protect your privacy. And I will consolidate all the others, especially these in vehicles that are parking at these places. We should be able to notify all those homeless individuals that are in their vehicles where they can park safely, securely, and protected at where they can stay and be as safe. We should notify every one of these vehicles and homeless individuals where they can park safely. And that should be notified and written in signs everywhere, so we don't have to arrest or confiscate and compound their vehicles. God bless America, and God bless Donald Trump, and God bless you. Thank you very much, Bonin. I appreciate that.
Before you begin, Ms. McAllister, I noticed there's a couple of people in the room that I don't recognize as having been here before, so I will give the disclaimer that my colleagues and I always give in these committee meetings when we see somebody who may be new. Please do not interpret our lack of interrupting some of the offensive comments that often come up in public comment as an endorsement of or an agreement with or even any minimal level of tolerance of. Because of a number of different court cases and because of the advice that we get from our city attorney, we are obligated to allow people to engage in that kind of speech as a requirement of honoring and respecting the First Amendment. So apologize for what you may have heard, and we're no happier about it than you are, I can guarantee you. All right, Ms. McAllister, you have filled out cards on a number of items. So you have 2 minutes for the items on the agenda, and then you have 1 minute for general public comments. So we'll do the 2 minutes on the agenda items first.
Okay, number one, you're going to get a status report on different projects. Well, sometimes I leave my car at home and I ride the bus, and I can see the problems that we may be having and why ridership is down. I read that ridership is down. Well, African Americans, the descendants of slaves, and a lot of whites are on the street. They're homeless. Many illegal aliens have been deported, so you don't have that ridership. And the ones who are working, they have cars now. I see them all the time. Some of them are even driving Mercedes, these illegal aliens. So they have our jobs. Bus drivers are passing up passengers. That 210 going south, 20, 30 minutes late. Last pickup at 4, you don't see them until 6 o'clock. We have ride share. That could be taking some of the ridership. And we have these bikes. People are using these scooters, these electric scooters. So yes, ridership is down. And also they're stealing, from your card. So I don't trust these cards because they snatch money off of them. Now, the next one, number 2, here you want expansion to overnight parking in district number 560 in Baldwin Village. That's a good idea. Also, you need to put some toilets in these communities, especially where you have the parking and you're allowing this. Mayor Garcetti was interviewed last night. There are only 14 toilets in the city of 75,000 homeless people. I'm counting the ones in their automobiles. You can't count the ones in their autos. You just did the shelters and whatnot in the street. We've got maybe 1 million in automobiles. You just don't know. So we need at least each district to have about 30 toilets spread out. People, they put it on the news last night. They didn't care. They showed a man pull down his pants and poop right in front of the business steps, right where the flowers were. People pooping everywhere. And I think it's also they're doing it on purpose, just to show you that they don't appreciate this. Okay, so we need to do something about that. And that's a good idea, number 5. Program to allow private entities to install electric vehicle charging stations.
Okay, you have 1 minute for general public comment.
Okay, my general public comment is we need some special buses or bus fares for the homeless. Some kind of way you can give them some sort of identification showing that they're homeless so they can ride, they can move around. A lot of them stay in the same place for months or years, and then those places become contaminated. Give them some kind of free bus trips, maybe 5 trips a week or something. Something for them, and we need those toilets. Now, that's very important. I was shocked that he said 14, and then at night they remove them because they don't have any staff to watch. So they take the toilets out at night. This was on the news now. I watch my news on the web because that news on television, I threw my television away 15 years ago. That's a bunch of bull. They don't put the real news on there. They had interviewing Garcetti, and he said we only have 14. They said, well, why can't you get more? We don't have any money. That's a lie. Where's that $1.2 billion? For the HHH. So you guys didn't know you could be busted out about this HHH. That's why you caught off guard. That money is gone. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Sachs.
I did. Item number 4. Yes, thank you. Good afternoon, Arnold Sachs. So I'm wondering in this item, is this a consultation, a solicited proposal that you're making with Metro? Metro is muscling in on Uber and Lyft to take over the short rides that Metro used to say they lost passengers to Uber and Lyft because they were losing ridership on Metro. So they have discovered through data that now it's a good idea to create this program so that they can take over Uber and Lyft rides by implementing a short vehicle type program. What they're not doing And what they should be doing, a better deal would be an unsolicited proposal. As Metro and LADOT transition to electric vehicles, both agencies will be stuck paying for natural gas and electric vehicles at the same time. But they'll be parking natural gas vehicles and not receiving revenue. What they should do, and what you should consider, is putting those natural gas vehicles, keeping them on the road, using the funds for this proposal to pay for the drivers, which will make jobs happen. Jobs is a very important thing in the city of Los Angeles. You may think that there's a really robust economy, but it's not so robust. If you have to have Uber and Lyft drivers out on the road instead of bus drivers. So the public is going to pay twice for vehicles. One will be electric, that'll be used, and the other will be natural gas that'll be parked. Park the natural gas up your ass. How's that sound? Anyway, that's what I think you ought to do. Franchise Tax Board. I'm looking at the Franchise Tax Board was eliminated by state legislature. I'm wondering if the Franchise Tax Board has oversight over franchises. And I always thought...
You now have 1 minute
That's
for
fine.
general public
So again, I'll continue. Does the Franchise Tax Board have oversight over franchises? I always used to think that the tax, because it was a tax board, it had oversight on the taxes that are distributed to the cities and the counties, like through Prop A and Prop B, C, and Measure R, Measure M, and whatever sales tax goes into the state. That may not be the case. If it's a franchise tax board and has oversight over franchises, that's why there's such a problem with marijuana dispensaries, because it allows for limited ownership, limited owners to have maximum ownership over dispensaries. Not fair. By the way, have you ever heard of Skokie, Illinois? That was a famous court case in the Supreme Court where hate speech was decided. It was decided hate speech is not free speech. You make that decision, not the courts, not the city attorney. A judge makes that decision. That's what you will need to take the blame for. Take the responsibility.
All right, that concludes general public comment for this meeting. So we'll get to the agenda. Mr. Kress, do you have any objection to approving items 2 and 7 on consent?
Actually, I'm not sure I have agenda yet.
Item 2 is an overnight parking district in CD 10, and item 7 is OVRAs in 3 and 6.
Yes.
Okay, so items 2 and 7 are approved on consent. And then item number 3, we are going to continue to give the author more time to work with the Department of Transportation. Okay, that brings us to the rest of the agenda, and we will begin with item number 1.
Item number 1 is the General Manager from LADOT to present a verbal report on the department's ongoing practices and programs and recognition of department's employees for outstanding service.
Good afternoon, committee members. So today, as always, we're going to recognize some outstanding employees from LADOT. And first, please stand when I call your name. We're going to recognize traffic officers David Abrego and Marlene Prado. In recent years, misuse and abuse of disabled parking placards has dramatically increased. Due to the outcry from numerous entities and many concerns from ADA voices, the Department of Transportation Parking Enforcement and Traffic Control Division reinvigorated enforcement operations to confiscate and issue parking citations to motorists who abuse and misuse disabled parking placards in the city of Los Angeles. Since the inception of these focused enforcement operations, a team of traffic officers were trained, mentored, and guided on the most effective way to search for violators. With this in mind, the Central Area Parking Enforcement enforcement, DP Cadre, has worked diligently and effectively during these operations. Specifically, the efforts and strategic mindsets of Traffic Officer David Abrego and Marlene Prado stand out as stellar. Officers Abrego and Prado have developed special skills and knowledge on this topic and have been frequently called upon to train other officers that participate as dedicated enforcement teams. It was on July 10, 2019, when the work of both of these officers could not be overlooked when they confiscated 21 placards. Traffic Officer Abrego and Prado are commended for personifying the department's principle of having a problem-solving attitude. They are creative and work closely with the public and each other to identify issues, opportunities, and solutions. They are resourceful and provide meaningful options to address problems. Great job. And I do just want to note, that our traffic officers are not sworn. And that means that when they go out into the field and they confront somebody who is illegally using a placard, they don't know what they're going to encounter. And they really only have their wits and their skills to sort of make sure that they keep each other safe and that they get the job done. So they are really exemplary at what they do, and we're very lucky to have them. So next, I'm going to recognize David Summers, Supervising Transportation Planner 1.
I have never heard a planner get that much applause in my life.
That's how we do it in T Committee, Council Member. David is with the LADOT Transportation Planning and Policy Division, and his team has accomplished a great deal of work. Under David's direction, they led the development and adoption of the effort of the new citywide vehicle miles traveled guidelines, allowing Los Angeles to be a leader on this front as the fifth city to make this critical shift 1 year ahead of the required deadline. Work to secure big data platform tools for the department to ensure more consistent and equitable approaches to policy development and decision-making citywide. Applied for and received state grant funding to plan for a connected network of safe bike and pedestrian connections on neighborhood streets. Created an LADOT project database that unified the various work programs and projects led or supported by different teams within our department. Developed a prioritization tool that scores the projects based on their ability to advance our core values related to safety, health, and equity. Finalized a project development and planning guide to assist LADOT project managers in assessing the appropriate level of analysis, environmental documentation, and public engagement needed to secure a successful project delivery and help secure $180 million in funding for transportation projects throughout the city. As the department's lead on policy and CEQA environmental review, David is always willing and available to help LADOT project leads in completing the necessary environmental documentation to move projects along. David is always a willing collaborator on efforts that move the needle. His team contributes to work programs across the city and with our partner agencies of City Planning, Bureau of Engineering, Streets LA, Metro, SCAG, and Caltrans to ensure that they're working in sync with us towards realizing the city's sustainability goals and outcomes. David's wonderful sense of humor, diligence, and collaborative spirit is appreciated by his LADOT colleagues and our partner agencies. Thank you, David.
That's pretty impressive. Applause for a planner. I'm really impressed. Anything else?
Nope, that's it.
All right. Thank you to all three of you for the work that you do. All of it goes generally uncelebrated, whether it's the work out on the streets where you're sometimes met with hostile reaction, or the work inside the building where you're sometimes met with glazed eyes or hostile reaction, depending. So thank you all. And thank you again for doing this every month. Mr. Kress, do you have any comments or questions?
No, nothing at this.
All right. So with that, item number 1 is approved. And that brings us to item number 4.
Item number 4 is a Bonner, Krikorian, Martinez motion directing DOT in consultation with Metro, the Bureau of Engineering, and Streets LA to report with a proposed Green New Deal sustainable transportation network and projected mobility benefits and emission reductions.
I'll wait till everybody walks out. Okay, so there's no staff report on this one because what we're doing here in this motion is basically asking staff to report. So there's no point in having staff report on our request to have them report. But let me just give a little context about what the hell we're doing because it's a motion that actually references 6 other motions. We do so because, you know, the mayor just did his executive directions and his press conference on the Green New Deal, which underscores and advances a number of different things that the council has been working on, particularly me and Mr. Koretz. We know that transportation is one of the biggest contributors to negative climate change in this country and in this region. And as our power sector gets pushed into a cleaner direction, thanks to the work of members of the colleague, members of the council, and to people like Ms. Kropke, and our buildings become more energy efficient, the sustainable transportation is still the missing leg of the stool. And, you know, we are starting finally to make some great progress on bus electrification, both at LA Metro and at LA DOT. I am very proud to report, for those who did not know, that LA DOT is beating LA Metro at getting to the point of 100% electric. Thank you, Ms. Reynolds and your team. And also, just last week, the mayor and I joined with Salida and announced that LA DOT is making the largest purchase of electric buses in the country. So we now have the first place largest order and the second place largest order. So that's pretty cool. But while we are doing that, we know that the department, DOT, and other agencies get sort of swamped by paper that comes from around the horseshoe, and that there are lots of different motions and lots of different requests. And we wanted to create a way to make sure that the things that we keep saying are a priority are given a means for LA DOT to focus on those priorities and not have to get pulled away by whatever we introduce on a different day. So what we wanted to do is be able to have a discussion here in this committee on those 6 motions and be able to develop an implementation plan for them. Because whether it's homelessness or whether it's transportation or whether it's public works in Los Angeles, we've started doing a really good job on coming up with our plans, and we need now to focus on implementing them. So, you know, one of the biggest barriers we know to transit in Los Angeles is that it's just not safe and it's just not convenient. Our buses are still too slow, largely because of traffic and a lack of dedicated bus lanes. Our sidewalks are still a mess, and it's this sort of dynamic we have in Los Angeles that the things we most want people to do, we make difficult for them to do. And that's something we'll also discuss in the next item on the agenda. So we have all these aspirational goals and visions, and we want to work towards getting a plan on them. So my goal with this motion is to develop that concrete implementation strategy that will be able to focus LA DOT and the council and the mayor's office all together on the kind of projects we need. And I want to create that space here in this committee for that to happen. So we have 3 speakers on this, Gustavo Hernandez, Jennifer Kropke, and Sean Meredith. Come on up. You can all come up at the same time, if there's enough chairs. Go ahead.
Good afternoon, Chair Bonin and committee members. My name is Gustavo Hernandez, and I'm the LA Operations Manager for Lyft Bikes and Scooters. Here to share my thoughts and extend our support for Item 4, the development of a Green New Deal sustainable transportation network. At the heart of Lyft's mission is a commitment to building partnerships that place people, not cars, at the center of our cities. That's why we're excited to support LA's effort to lead the nation through this Green New Deal and achieve shared climate and equity goals of increasing shared mobility options and reducing car congestion. As you prepare to build a comprehensive network of active transportation corridors for walking, bicycling, and micromobility, we hope this plan includes more bus lanes, more bike lanes, and more infrastructure to provide safer mobility options and more accessible streets for all of us across Los Angeles. We remain committed to working with the city to reduce the climate impact of urban travel by allowing our users to choose the best mobility option for every type of trip. This proudly makes us one of the only operators promoting connections to public transit and offering first and last mile solutions through our platform. Thank you for your time. All of us at Lyft are eager to become close partners with the city and providing our communities a sustainable, inclusive, and equitable transportation network they deserve.
Thank you. Let me also take just 10 seconds to thank Lyft for something else. We opened up 154-bed bridge housing in Venice yesterday, and one of our partners in that is Lyft, which has agreed for the first month to offer free transportation for the employees and the residents. Just want to thank you for that again.
Of course, thank you.
Ms. Kropke.
How can I follow free transportation like that? Come on, you're killing me.
Free electric.
All right. Good afternoon, council members. My name is Jennifer Kropke. I work for IBEW Local 11 and NECA, the LA contractors. We're speaking out in support of this. Also wanted to let you know we're your partners in this. I'm a member of LA Metro Sustainability Council. I was the vice chair for last year. Part of what LA Metro did was try to come up with ways that we could really incorporate all of these Green New Deal concepts. One of the ones that they came up with was the Electric Vehicle Infrastructure Training Program, which I'm happy to provide more information on. But in the 20 seconds, just wanted to let you know we're supportive of this, and we also want to partner with your office and these agencies in terms of making sure that these Green New Deal aspects include good green jobs. And part of what I like to say is we are in a climate crisis, and we have to move like we're in a climate crisis. And the way we bring people with us is by making sure that they have good jobs that pay family-sustaining wages.
Great, thank you. Mr. Meredith?
You've all known about this stuff for a long time, and we have a mobility plan, so I don't know what to talk about. I don't know what to give comment about anymore when I come here to talk about transportation, because you know about the road statistics, you know about the deaths, you know the names of the victims, so why bother saying them, like Marina Lopez, who just got dragged down Sunset Boulevard on Monday night. I don't know, should I come here and beg for the mobility plan to be implemented? It's being ignored. It's really just gets ridiculous. I have all these things to say about street safety, but I've said them all before. You guys know it, and the toxic car dominance is what you guys prioritize over street safety, over climate change, over the poison that Angelenos breathe. And I just until you announce and implement, implementation plans and talking, we've all had it. We've been hearing about this for so long, and it's really sad. I hope you implement something, so put up or shut up, please.
Okay, well, that was a less polite version of what I said. Mr. Kress, do you have any thoughts or comments on this? Is just directing them to actually start doing the work.
No, I thought actually that was a pretty good blunt summary of what we need to do. I would say it's exciting that IBEW is helping to lead the way on this, and look forward to all the good things that we'll be working with them on in the future.
Awesome. Okay, so without objection, that item is approved. And that brings us to item number 5.
Item number 5 is the DOT report relative to creating a pilot program to allow private entities to install electric vehicle charging stations in the public right-of-way and the installation of associated parking restriction signage.
Hi. Good afternoon. My name is Jana Smith, and I'm from the LA DOT New Mobility Team. Yeah.
Good afternoon. I'm Miguel Gallegos. I also work with Jana and the New Mobility Team.
So today we're reporting back on the development of a framework for enabling private companies to install electric vehicle charging infrastructure in the public right-of-way. LADOT has been working with other departments, including LADWP, Public Works, and the Mayor's Office Sustainability Team to start developing this framework and developing a pilot program for providing permits. So our staff examined the fees and permitting processes of existing programs to assess what the costs of this kind of permit what the cost ranges might be. The existing cost for the fixed space car share permit is a little over $1,300 annually, and the other similar program is through the Blue LA electric vehicle charging stations. The permit fees that LADOT and Blue have had to obtain from other departments to install those run about $20,000 and up per space. That is a one-time fee. But that's the broad range of all those different fees, and those vary depending on the exact site location and what those assessments are coming back from LADWP and from Public Works. The pilot we are developing would have one LADOT staff acting as the case manager who would accept applications for the program, and they would guide those applicants through obtaining those other permits from other departments, as well as assisting with station siting and including looking at alternate sites based on the feasibility feedback that we get from other departments as they examine whether there's enough access to utilities and electrical availability for those sites, as well as looking at whether it would be adjacent to bike lanes or metered parking and things like that that we would want to exclude from the program. LODT would start with providing eligible zones that they could propose siting the locations at, but then we would narrow it down based on those applications and then based on the feasibility assessments that go into each of those individual spots. Staff also reached out to various operators already working in the space on the private side and to get just some feedback on their interest in the program. They found that operators were interested in it, but saw some obstacles, mostly in terms of the cost of the permitting for each space, as well as the term of the pilot. A lot of the operators expressed that because of the cost of permitting and the cost on their own just for acquiring and installing all of the infrastructure, they would prefer a permit term of at least 7 years to be able to get an actual return on investment on installing the chargers in the public right-of-way while still being able to have competitive fees for charging there. Additionally, some of the operators stated that they would prefer guidelines rather than specific locations to choose from when siting those, so that they could utilize some of their own market research or things like that into determining where to site the chargers. So our next steps right now are we are going to come back with the proposed rules and guidelines for the full pilot permitting program, and that would include not only determining what the term of the pilot would be that would be feasible for LADOT to implement, but also the proposed fees that we would charge, not just for the LADOT permit, but at least providing what information that we could provide up front based on those other permits. Right now, it looks like we'd just be providing a range, so we would have the flat LADOT fee for applying, and then we would provide the range that would be determined through the feasibility and siting process.
Okay. Anything you want to add?
Oh, no, that's it.
So we have one speaker, Ms. Kropke, if you want to come back up. You guys can stay in case you have questions.
Hi, good afternoon again. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your presentation. Just wanted to speak in support of this, but also ask for council members to consider having electric vehicle infrastructure training program as an aspect to this pilot program. And part of the reason why is because many people don't know all of the chargers that were done for the City of LA. The de facto policy has been EVITP certification for all the electricians, and that includes all of the municipal charging, all of the police charging, and all of the fire charging. All of those chargers created good green jobs here in Los Angeles for IBEW workers and for NECA contractors. But the other aspect to it is the City of LA has been able to benefit from safe charging and charging that adheres to ADA compliance. That's part of the reason why those specs are so important. So I would request we consider having EVITP as a spec conditional to being issued a permit so that everyone can get that same safe charging experience.
Thank you. Let me thank LADOT staff on this. As someone, in fact, I think both of us drive electric vehicles, this cannot happen fast enough. There is a real lack in Los Angeles and a rapidly increasing demand. And we want people to be making that demand. And so we want to have the supply that meets it. I want to acknowledge how much great work that you guys did in sort of assessing the landscape that's out there. I want to thank you for the recommendations that you've made and the role that LADOT is really stepping up and willing to play. I got to note that I don't think it's going to be enough to get us where we need to be in pacing. No matter how energetic you are, no matter how much you try, one agency trying to corral other agencies is impossible. I mean, it's a Herculean effort for an elected official to corral two agencies, and here we've got LADOT, LADWP, Street Services, BOE, and BSL, and that does not create a fast pathway. It just simply doesn't. And as much as DOT is willing to be a concierge, that process ain't going to do it. And that's what I was alluding to in my comments on the previous item, is that the city makes most difficult the things we want people to do. And it's just, it needs to get fixed. So in addition to this, and maybe you can have some thoughts when you report back, but I don't want you to be the bad guy with the other agencies either, is I'm interested in bringing in a motion, and I suspect, well, I guess we can't. Well, we haven't done the motion yet. I suspect Mr. Koretz has a mutual interest in it, is to create a streamlining process. We got to do something a lot quicker, because if these things take as long as it does to install a solar panel in Los Angeles, I mean, that's a disaster. So that's my thought on that. We'll probably do this is the first Mr. Bruins is hearing of this, do a separate proposal on that. But I would like, when you guys come back in, what is it, 60 days?
I think so.
60 days, to report back on what Ms. Kropke was saying about the EVITP. I think that's a sort of no-brainer, really, for what we need to be doing. It's the right thing to be doing. It's consistent with the Green New Deal that we want to be implementing here in Los Angeles. So, Mr. Kretz.
Yeah, and I would probably author to co-present that with you, except it would be a Brown Act violation, so we won't, but I'm enthusiastic about the concept nonetheless. It is difficult sometimes to rein in other departments. I mean, we had that difficulty putting together the targeted local hire program, and Council President Wesson had to send a letter. I sent a letter to all departments as the head of personnel. The mayor sent a letter. We all made phone calls. We wound up having quarterly meetings where each department would talk about their progress. And it was still really slow, but once we had some departments do it, and they found that individuals we hired through targeted local hire were more enthusiastic than anyone else and made some of our best employees, the program wound up being very successful. So if we all have to goose people a little bit, we'll have to do that, and I'm certainly happy to participate in that. I'm sure Mr. Bonin is as well. And I don't know, in whatever report back, if you could also address who's actually going to be doing the work on the installations. And I don't know if we have a project labor agreement or some type of labor peace agreement, but if you could report back on that possibility as well, that would be great.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, so we will receive this item, and we'll look forward to an update in 60 days, and you can look forward to another motion coming in to try to streamline.
All right.
Mr. Chair, you're approving the item. Is that
Is it an approved item?
approved so that we'll report back in 60 days?
John White, City Clerk, to confirm, you're approving the LADOT report dated February 20, submitted last week to the committee, along with your amendments today.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and that brings us to our final item, which is item number 6.
This is a DOT report relative to an appeal filed by LA Checker Cab Cooperative Incorporated of the actions taken by the Board of Taxi Cab Commissioners at its meeting held June 21st, 2018, imposing a fine in the amount of $335,000 for violations of the city's taxi cab franchise ordinance number 181423 and revoking LA Checker Cab's franchise.
Okay, so what we're going to do on this item is I'm going to ask Jarvis or anyone who's going to do it from DOT to make the presentation. Then we have two public speakers. I will ask them to come up, and then we may have some follow-up questions for you, Jarvis, based on that public comment, and then we'll deliberate.
Thank you, committee members. Jarvis Murray, For-Hire Policy and Enforcement Administrator for the Los Angeles Department of Transportation. And this item comes to you from the Taxi Cab Commission. Our department, the LADOT, we take our role as a steward of the public roads and safety very seriously. And one of the things that we've been on a quest to do related to our taxi cab service is to bring back the trust that many of our customers used to have in taxi cabs, and also to create a sense that they are a viable option. What you're going to see today and what you're going to learn about today is something that essentially violated that public's trust and essentially committed a fraud on the public. So this all began back in late 2017. We learned of a complaint from a customer who had taken a taxi cab from LAX into Hollywood. That taxi cab trip for that customer came out to $79, and that trip should have been around $42. Our department looked into it, and with the great assistance of a fantastic investigative team, they were well aware that there clearly had to be a meter tampering issue involved in this matter. We looked into it, and we did discover that there were devices on that meter. We gave that meter belonged to an LA Checker cab vehicle. We gave it back to LA Checker cab. We removed the owner, and we informed them of the issue. They were aware of it. They cooperated in the investigation and said, it won't happen again, we promise. And we said, great. However, being that our role is to often check, we decided to wait. We waited a few months, and frankly, because of this issue, we actually thought it wasn't just going to be limited to Checker. So I authorized a sweep at LAX about 3 or 4 months later. So this incident occurred around September, October 2017, and about March of 2018, I authorized a sweep because I wanted the noise to die down. I've been doing regulations for quite a while, and as you guys are well aware, the initial shock chills everyone, and everyone stops, and then they wait till it dies down because for them, they often believe, we'll be able to go back to doing what we're doing, just wait a little while, and that's what exactly happened. So we did a sweep at LAX in March of 2018. We looked at about 14 different vehicles, not just LA Checker vehicles, and we found more devices within those vehicles. And in case anyone is wondering, these are kind of what they look like. These are the ones we pulled out of the vehicles. These are attached to the mileage sensor on the car, and there's a slight little remote that you can use that the driver is able to click, which will demonstrate to you that there's more mileage on the vehicle than there actually is. So in the example of the Hollywood case, that trip from LAX to Hollywood is between 11 and 14 miles, but the meter actually read that it was a 25-mile trip, and that's because someone was able to click the mileage sensor to move a little bit faster. And so once learning of that, we don't have a tolerance for this type of thing within the LADOT. And part of this is because, again, this is a violation of public trust. This wasn't one person that did something, because we had that. We had the one incident. We gave it back to the company. They learned about it, and we were hoping that it would be better. 3 months later, it wasn't better, and we found it on more vehicles, which told us that the company had not done what it was supposed to do as it relates to ensuring that its owners, its shareholders, and its drivers weren't committing fraud on the public. They have a responsibility to know what's in the vehicle. They have a responsibility to know what's happening with the vehicle. Their excuse to us was, well, the drivers did this or the owners did this, but your name is on the side of the vehicle. And if the LADOT is the body that authorizes and approves the vehicles to be on the street, then as far as we are concerned, our name is on the side of these vehicles. And we felt that as the LADOT, we are not going to authorize and violate the public's trust by having you get into a vehicle, us knowing that it may or may not have a sensor on it, but hey, best of luck, and we'll blame it on some poor driver. And, you know, that's not how we're going to do this operation. So, for that reason, we went to our board, to our commission, to revoke. Our idea was to revoke the company and submit a $335,000 fine. That fine is based upon a franchise ordinance. We found 8 violations. Your first violation is $10,000, your second violation is $25,000, and your third violation and subsequent violations are $50,000. And that's how we came up with that figure of $335,000. We took it to the commission, and where we learned legally that the commission does not have the full authority to revoke a franchise. They do have the authority to impose sanctions and a penalty. So, and they were not going to recommend revoking a franchise. So we moved ahead regardless. We moved ahead with the hopes that they would recommend revocation, but they did not. They looked at our violations. We went back several times, as I reported in the report, and we came down to a final of the board issuing a penalty of $200,000 along with several conditions. The drivers that were involved, we understand, were dismissed by LA Checker. There were 4 owners involved. 2 of the owners were removed as owners, and the other 2 were allowed to remain. This was a commission decision. And we are now with the company, who we believe is ultimately 100% responsible for these matters. The commission gave a $200,000 fine along with conditions, the conditions being things such as integration with MDS, removal of owners and shareholders from the vehicles, and things of that sort. This occurred nearly 10 months ago, and at that time, they were given a $200,000 penalty with a payment period of $20,000 per month to pay over a 10-month period. As you guys are aware, or as you all are well aware of, our franchises are going to expire on June 30th. And frankly, you know, even with LA Checker, we are not convinced that they will do what's right to resolve this issue. So for us, revocation is still something that we cared about greatly. LA Checker has not paid, not even the fines. They've not paid the fines. They've appealed the fines, and we understand that. They have not even paid our franchise fees for the last 2 months. So our December and January franchise fees have not been paid by LA Checker. They're about $50,000 in the hole with us on that matter, and all of our other franchise companies are paying. It's important to us to make a statement to the public as well as to our companies that you will be held accountable for bad behavior to the public. And right now, during this appeal period, what we are seeing, especially by not paying the December and January franchise fee payment, is that this company seems to believe that at some point this will all peter out and we'll have an opportunity to start over again. And that is not what we are going to do. We are going to, as long as the franchises are maintained, are in place, we're going to continue that matter. If this goes in our way and Checker is unable to pay, this will work in terms of their historical record for if they were to reapply under an open permitting system come July. And so that is where we stand on this matter. I do not want to go too long, but I am open to any questions related to this matter.
Thanks. Let me do the 2 public comments, then we'll have some questions. Neil Evans and Yevgeny Smoliar.
Councilmember, this is an appeal. It's really not public comment. It's more of a hearing.
Okay.
So you can set a time limit if you want to go longer.
Yeah. Are you making a joint presentation or are you separate?
We're together. I'm the attorney and that's the client, but we both have different things to say.
Okay. Is 5 minutes enough?
Yes.
Okay.
But we'll do our best.
Okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Neil Evans. I've been the attorney for LA Checker for some time. The problem in this case is that there were alleged 4 violations out of 269 taxis. 269 taxis, 4 violations. What Mr. Jarvis failed to mention is that there were other sting operations in which they found 0 violations. So the problem in this case is there's a specific board order 469 that specifically addresses having a tainted taxi meter, and it doesn't provide for fines of any substance. It doesn't provide for these penalties. Instead, what they did is, we're going to go after you on your franchise, and we had to contest that. It turns out after several hearings, they determined there were only 2 violations. How do they get to this fine? They took 2 provisions of our franchise, one that says you cannot operate an illegal bandit activity, and they made that 4 violations. And then there's another provision that says you're supposed to do weekly inspections. They made that another 4 violations. But the fact is that we didn't fail to do our weekly inspections. We're not operating a bandit operation, so the franchise penalties don't actually apply. And then we brought to their attention that the franchise penalties are intended to be progressive, which means that you do a violation on one date, the next time you do it, it's going to be a more serious fine. And we pointed out to the commission, okay, well, you found 4, now you only rule there's only 2, that shouldn't really have progressive penalties. But if you're going to do 2 violations of a franchise, we're not sure whether you're saying we're doing a bandit operation or not doing proper inspections, but you're not going under Rule 469, which is the proper section. If you're going under that, the penalty should have been first violation of the franchise is $10,000, second violation of the franchise is $25,000. So instead of doubling and tripling and quadrupling our penalties, let's deal with the facts. The facts are, and Mr. Jarvis did not really speak to what actually happened at the hearings, it was reduced from 4 violations down to 2. They actually exonerated 2 owners, found that the violations did not exist. So we're being penalized, they're trying to revoke our franchise, and we're being penalized to the point of $200,000 plus because of the way that they're interpreting our franchise. So we had to appeal. We're not appealing in a frivolous way. We're saying, wait a minute, there's a specific board order that deals with this. You're not going under that. You're trying to revoke our franchise, impose a horrible fine, when in fact 2 taxis, 2 alleged, and there was never any real evidence during the hearing about how this happened or which kind of zappers they were using, anything like that. We never got to any evidence of what happened, even though we had challenges to that. It was all about the penalty. So we've appealed it. What we're saying is that if it's a franchise violation, there are 2 violations, no question about it, 2 violations, $10,000 for the first violation, really shouldn't be a second violation, but if you're going to do that, same time, not progressive, another $25,000, that should be a total of $35,000. So that's my presentation. I want to leave some minutes for my client.
Yevgeny Smolyer, president of LA Checker Cab. For the record, I'm not the owner of the company. I own 1 vehicle, been in this company for the last 29 years. And I agree with Jarvis on one thing, that when we drive on the streets, we represent Los Angeles, we have a seal that bears logo of Los Angeles, and we have to take care of the city. The thing is, with the franchise fee that's been mentioned, let me clear this right away. We're only behind 1 payment, which was missed in December. January payment was made. February payments have to be done by the end of this month, and it's going to be made. We're behind bandit fee for different reasons, because the bandit fee is being collected right now on a base of there is fight against the bandit, but Uber and Lyft acting as a bandit, but it's beside the point. Here is the thing what happened. The fine was imposed. The drivers who got caught with this old technology was fired. The owner, that was 1 owner who owned those vehicles, 1 family, a husband and wife, they were removed from the franchise, removed from the company. They don't own any cabs. Checker Cab find out about this on March, that still 2 cabs doing this. We find out the old technology exists, that we have to change it. Right away in March, we start implementing a new technology called soft meter, the meter inside the terminal that nobody can tamper with. It took us 3 or 4 months to get approval from Department of Transportation to put it on the road. We did the approval, they start working, complaints stop, meter overcharges stop, because the new technology cannot be break. What we're asking here, is very simple. Yes, there was a violation. Yes, the 2 cabs got caught. Instead of us paying the fine right now, let us put this money to a new technology. Let us upgrade our vehicles to electrical cars. That's what we're planning to do anyway. Let us change this to compete with ride-sharing companies. The franchise is over in June. Everything has to change. You all aware that we are not working in the airport like we used to do starting October 31st. We lost a lot of money, a lot of owners dropping the seals, not only in 1 company, but all over the industry. The only way to survive, the only way to fight the industry against, ride sharing, we need funds. We're not publicly funded companies. We're not, nobody's investing in us, only our owners, only our drivers, people who spend life in these companies. So I'm asking a simple thing. I'm not denying the 2 cars were caught. Yes, they were. The devices were presented to you, not denying that either. But instead of us paying the fine, let us use this to upgrade our companies, to change this industry, and be properly, competing with Uber and Lyft and giving rights to our customers. Thank you.
Thank you. Jarvis, any rebuttal?
Yes. I'd like to go on to say that the attorney slightly misrepresented some of the statements that were made here. And as it relates to there were two individuals who were not penalized. This does not mean that the commission found that there was no improper activity. The commission determined, based upon, their wisdom, that perhaps there was enough, punishment done, in particular for the family. The family had 3 members, a mother, a father, and a son. The son was also an owner. The commission had determined that the mother and father already being out of the business, perhaps we should not penalize the son as well. That does not mean that nothing was found. The same issue occurred with the other individual. The other individual's device was found not by LADOT, but rather by ATS, which is the taxi cab supervision at LAX. ATS did not report it directly to LADOT until we had conducted the sweep. So we put that into our revocation case, and the commission did determine that because LADOT did not find it, that they were not going to hold it against that particular individual, considering that in our second sweep, we didn't find any in that particular individual's vehicles. Also, as it relates to the franchise ordinance, we went under several different rules. And Mr. Evans is correct that the rule book, and I think you referred to 469, he's right. The taxi cab rule book, unfortunately, has very, very few penalties as it relates to company behavior. And frankly, that was not acceptable for us, so that we did look to the franchise. Because again, this was not the kind of behavior that we felt that a $25 fine was going to be enough, comparatively considering that the complaints that we saw were each nearly double the amount of the fare. We used Franchise Section 2.2C, where the grantee has failed to comply with or violated any term or condition hereof of board rules or orders and board department directives, and the grantee has illegally conducted any type of public transportation operation within the city. That's not bandit activity. That's any illegal operation, and defrauding the public by going against the meter and going over the meter, the actual meter rate, is an illegal activity. Also, we relied on Section 4.2 of the ordinance, which says, all vehicles, equipment, and appurtenances used under this franchise shall be operated and maintained in accordance with all applicable federal and state laws and ordinances of the city and orders of the board. Grantee, which is LA Checker, shall be responsible for the compliance of its members and drivers with all such laws, ordinances, rules, and orders. And further, Section 4.2b, the number of taxi cabs operated pursuant to this franchise, the manner and time of all operations, transportation service provided, and the rates or fares to be charged shall at all times conform to such regulations as shall from time to time be fixed or prescribed by the city or the board. And then we moved on to the other franchise pieces, which include Section 5.5, subsection 4, which is also conducting any illegal or unauthorized type of public transportation operation, and subsection 9, failure to conduct minimum weekly taxi cab vehicle inspections. So we did look through the franchise. We were very circumspect in what we chose, and to Mr. Evans noted that we did do subsequent inspections. That's correct, because once we did the sweep again in March, there was an even larger chill, and we did do another sweep, I think perhaps in June or July of that year, and we didn't find any on any vehicles. So that is correct. But beyond that, the fact of the matter is that it took us having to do multiple sweeps, and by this time, we had already started filing for the revocation of the company in order to get people to recognize that the LADOT is taking this seriously. We do not believe that prior to this, LA Checker had taken this matter seriously, and we are now in a situation where perhaps now they're taking it seriously, but if it takes this much to get a company to take it seriously, that is not a company that should be operating on our streets.
Thanks. Let me start with a question for the city attorney. I want to make sure that we are sort of adjudicating the right matter and that we understand what the scope of our responsibilities and abilities are. Are we as a body being asked to weigh in on the verdict on the facts, the culpability, or is it simply a matter of the fine?
The issue before you is whether the Taxi Cab Commission abused its discretion in imposing a $200,000 fine against LA Checker Cab.
Okay, so it's about the amount of the fine. That is what is before us. Okay. And how does this work? Is this, are we the substitute adjudicating body, or is this like a 245 where if we disagree, it goes back to them?
It's part of the franchise code section, 1400 of the LAMC, and it doesn't really provide, it just says that the appeals can be taken to council. It doesn't mention 245, so you have a lot of discretion in terms of what you can do.
All right. So let me start with a couple questions for Jarvis. You initially wanted the number of vehicles subject to the penalty to be larger, and you wanted the penalty to be much more significant. And the commission sort of whittled it down to make it, in their minds, more of a reasonable fine or assessment upon them. Is that correct?
That's correct.
And one of the points I heard Mr. Smollier make is that he was saying instead of making them pay this, let them reinvest it. Am I correct or mistaken in my understanding that the costs of compliance with MDS, or at least a large amount of the costs of compliance with the MDS, are to be subtracted from the amount of their fine?
That's correct. According to the Commission's, one of the conditions, while we don't know what the actual cost of MDS would be, the Commission did state that if they could have provable costs that relates to them getting onto the platform, that the fine would be reduced by that amount. There was a limit to how much the Commission was going to reduce the amount. So their fine total would still have to be at least, I believe, $110,000. And the Commission would be willing to reduce up to $90,000 and change. There was an exact figure. If that's how much it costs for MDS compliance. If it cost $20,000, they would reduce by $20,000. And if it exceeded the $90,000, well, then it wouldn't. The Commission did not allow it to exceed that much.
Right. On June 20, 2019, the Commission voted to lower the gross fine reduction from $335 to $200,000, with the reducible cost by MDS compliance to a floor of $105,600. Depending on your perspective, the Commission reduced the fine by either a third or two-thirds.
Correct.
All right.
And if I may add one additional thing, I think it's important to note that many of the conditions that were imposed by the Commission, well, frankly, they won't outlast the franchise to the extent that these conditions will all become part of your permit conditions starting July 1st. So MDS, regardless of company, will be a permit condition for taxi cabs by July 1st. Moving the vehicles more towards electrification. For example, we gave a presentation last week where no more new gas vehicles will be introduced into the fleet after July 1st. So many of the things that were already there, the owners and shareholders, we will not be keeping track of owners and shareholders come July 1st. And actually, we've already started moving towards that direction. Many of the companies have started to begun investing in upfront prices and changes in meter technology. These are also things that we are going to be requiring. So to the extent that these conditions were done because we were hoping for some early adoption before we got to the stage where we would change the franchise over. Sure. We are now at a stage where the time for early adoption is over, and now all the companies are beginning to set up for the new regime. And so these conditions are essentially things they'd be required to do anyway come July 1st.
Would it be fair to say that in a weird way that this company's ability to subtract the MDS compliance from this fine actually puts them at sort of a head start or an advantage over the other companies that don't get this subtracted from anything?
We look at it that way because come July 1st, all companies will have to do this, and they'll all have to comply and pay whatever fees it's necessary. And this company already has a penalty against it. So all the companies that didn't defraud the public, or at least we didn't find them defrauding the public, would be at a slight disadvantage where they are having to do these things regardless. And there's no change. There's no accountability is what it looks like for them.
Okay. I mean, to my mind, it sounds like the commission tried its best to play Solomon and sort of split the baby, reduce the fines, still assess a fine, but give them the ability to almost halve the cost of the remaining fine by giving them the ability to subtract a substantial amount of the MDS compliance. Mr. Kretz?
Yeah. Well, I think you know my opinion in general of what we've done to decimate the taxi industry. So I don't think we've done anything to do the industry any favors at any point since the introduction of Uber and Lyft, except disadvantage them. Most of these companies are teetering on the brink anyway. I assume Checker is not any different. I think giving them a $200,000 fine is sort of a backdoor revocation. I don't know whether they'll be able to survive this extra expense. It seems from what I've read that the bulk of the problem was with one internal family and company, which was removed from their operation. It's not clear, and I had heard rumblings of other companies having the same problem, but it's very possible once they caught wind of enforcement that they made sure that they were able to stop any bad actions in this direction. So we've chosen to go after one company and come close to putting them out of business rather than actually look for compliance. They seem to have technological solutions that would prevent this in the future rather than looking closely at them with a desire to try to make one of the key companies in Los Angeles that still clings to life compliant. We seem to be looking to take them out of business as aggressively as we can. Also, the increasing fine amounts, similar to our ACE program, for instance, where if you have an animal violation, you're charged $100, and then if you haven't complied, the next time you pay $250, and the next time you pay $500. Well, it's not like we allow the same person to commit the same violations. We add them all up, and we stick them with a compiled bill of thousands of dollars. We implement the first stage, and we go after them, and we make sure they have paid and comply, and we'd go after them again. In this case, it seems like we just added everything up and didn't really take advantage of the purpose of doing it a step at a time. We didn't go after them and say, pay the $10,000, address it legally, and then once that's done, go back and do it again. We just added everything up, which seems to be going around the exact purpose of it. I certainly would be open to what they're suggesting of having the portion of the $200,000 fine go towards electrifying their fleet, because it would actually help them go in a direction we want them to go to while allowing them to survive. But personally, I think the way the increasing fines are staged was something that we completely ignored and defeated that whole purpose. So from my point of view, I would fine them the $35,000 for the first couple stages and require them to implement technology that would prevent them from violating in the future, and then move on. I'm also not sure I completely understand the MDS system. I don't know if we're actually going to be able to implement it in 10 months or implement it at all. So I don't know whether making it look like half is given back actually winds up giving them anything in reality. And the point that this is done primarily so people have a more confidence in the taxi system, I don't think taxis are struggling because of lack of confidence. I think if you did a survey, you'd probably find fewer than 1% of taxi and rideshare customers that would say, well, they've shifted to rideshare, that it's because taxis are overcharging them and they don't trust them. I think it's clearly because they're charged more. And the other things that we don't do to regulate them in terms of their pricing, et cetera, we do to taxis. So we've created an uneven playing field that we will only exacerbate by adding in this massive fine and making it this difficult for this company to continue. So were I to make a motion, I would move that we fine them their first 2 stages for $35,000 and require them to implement the technology that would prevent this kind of violation from being possible in the future.
We really need to get more members on this committee because sometimes you and I are totally in sync and sometimes we just have very different worldviews. And when that happens, we get stalled here, and that's been happening more recently.
May I make one response?
Sure.
Thank you. I just want it to be known that I understand the violation issue that you're bringing up, but the reason I mentioned earlier that we had an issue with the first time, they were notified of this issue, they were well aware of the issue, and we gave it months. We didn't notify anyone whether we were doing a sweep, but technically they have a heads up that the LA DOT cares about this matter. We didn't penalize them, we didn't issue them any fine, we penalized the owner and said, hey, make sure this doesn't happen again. And they said, absolutely, it won't happen again. And then 3 months later, we conducted the sweep. The sweep told us that they were not paying attention. It didn't matter that it happened again because we found it on multiple vehicles. And so for us, the violation, and again, the violations do add up because they were on different vehicles that were related to the company. We weren't going to do well, we found 10 vehicles today, so that's one violation. No, we found 10 different vehicles. I'm sorry, in this situation we found 4 different vehicles, but that's how we looked at it. And the other caveat I do want to give is that we don't believe that our role is to protect the industry. Our role is to facilitate regulations that allow them to grow, that allow them to do their business as best as possible. And if they are bad at business and cheat the public, I feel no obligation to protect them. If you are good at business and my regulations are in your way, then I do have an obligation to be more flexible and make that work, which is what we're doing. The things about them changing their business and doing things to prevent this from happening, these are things that the LA DOT is going to require. Everyone is well aware of this. We are moving to an upfront pricing model so that no driver can click away and change how much the fees are going to be. So this is something that everyone is going to have to do. The meter issue is the same issue. We already have a company that's putting together those things right now as we speak, and I'm in the middle of dealing with weights and measures to ensure that it can happen. Electrification, I have companies, new taxi companies, that are ready to come in and begin operations with EVs. So taxi business is here. Taxi business will be around. I am not here to protect bad actors. We are here to protect people who are wanting to grow the business and to make things happen in the business.
So all right, I'll give you one more.
Can I? Mm-hmm. First violation occurred in January 2018. I was inside the airport. The car was taken to a competitor meter shop, Yellow Cab. The meter was removed by Yellow Cab meter shop person and given to ATS. We were informed about it after the fact in March because your investigators find out about it in March when they were doing the sweep. They did not find out in January, they find out in March.
Yeah, we were not
Comes
informed
to
either.
Yes. Number two, I just want quick clarification. The checker cab started installing the new meter inside prior to all the rules being modified. In March or April, we brought our cab to Department of Transportation with the new technology and started showing it. We couldn't get approval from DOT for the next 3 months. Then you gave us the approval and we started installing it. So we are going up front with, we knew that you're going to come with the new changes. We knew that the changes are coming. Unfortunately, there is one person who was inside our company, and yes, it's a company responsibility to be responsible for all these findings. But again, I'm asking you guys right now to make a proper decision, not to penalize us to the bones and just put us out of business. Thank you.
And I hear some of your comments. The one thing I find completely unconvincing is how we did the fines. Fines are progressive for a reason. So when it first happened, they should have gotten a $10,000 fine. It's designed to make you sit up and take notice. And if $10,000 wasn't good enough and we found another violation, then you put in a $25,000 fine. At that point, it's pretty dramatic. I don't expect you to have further problems. But because we just socked them right up front, I think that's an absolutely improper usage of the fine structure. And there's no reason, no other reason why that structure is there. We didn't take advantage of it. We could have. It's possible that the very first time there was a violation, you should have just hit them with a $10,000 fine. I can't believe that wouldn't have caused them to sit up and take notice and realize a $25,000 fine was coming and seek every possible way to put a stop to it. Hitting them with a franchise-destroying fee, I think, is just going too far. And I believe it will meet the intended goal, which I believe is to revoke through the back door.
Okay, so I've got a different perspective. While I, to a degree, share the sympathy about the plight of the industry, I actually don't agree that we're not doing anything to benefit them. I think the new system coming on board in July 1 is largely designed to allow the industry to survive, and I think that is a very, very big thing that the city is doing. I also think that, I mean, at least for me, in sort of every decision is sort of a balance of competing different considerations, and I'm sorry, I'm getting the look that people can't hear me, is a balance of competing considerations, different things to think about. And in the mix of them, I think the one that I feel I have the greatest responsibility to weight is the interests of the members of the public who were defrauded as a result of the offenses. I also feel that the taxi commission is a lot more fluent in taxi matters than I or most members of the council, and spent a considerable amount of time deliberating on this. And it does strike me as pretty significant that they weighed the evidence that was presented and reduced the number of penalized offenses, reduced the scope of the fine dramatically, and then provided a pathway to reduce it even more dramatically through the being able to subtract or count the money from MDS compliance. That seems to me pretty significant. And I'm viewing this from the context of this matter didn't begin when it got to that table, that this matter has gone through various stages of review, and at each stage I think people have tried to address some of the concerns that Mr. Koretz has. I also got to say, I think to the extent I have been exposed to what he's done in his work, I think Mr. Jarvis is a consummate professional and has really brought a level of professionalism to our review of the taxi industry. And I just do not feel that you have some hidden agenda to drive anybody out of business. So we are sort of stuck in a split decision here. My understanding is that the council president is going to be making some new appointments to the committee at the beginning of March. So my suggestion is well, I don't know that we have much choice, but to hold it until we have a third member. And we will hold that meeting, that hearing prior to June 30, obviously. Yeah.
Mr. Chair, so are you recommending that they not continue to add fines during this period since we're actually holding up the period? Otherwise, I don't know if when they come back it'll be a $220,000 fine because of interest. I don't know how that goes.
No, I'm not. I'm recommending that what we adjudicated was before us, and the fine doesn't come up unless there's another offense.
No, but I'm saying no interest on.
Yeah, there's been no change in the fine structure from what the commission imposed.
Yeah. DOT is nicer than some other government agencies. Okay, so we will hold that here until the next hearing when we have a slightly more complete committee.
My client does, pardon me, my client does advise me that they are charging interest. The fine is another $38,000 over the original amount in the interim. So we'd certainly request a stay of any additional interest.
I think that's agreed by both of us.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And the department has indicated as much, as has the city attorney. So, okay. So to be continued. We will see everybody back in March. And there's nothing else on the desk, is there?
Nope.
Okay. We are adjourned.
Thank you.